this is a real stuff because it's really every it is.
Let's think on the. If anybody goes on there, let me know if it's Welcome to GBM number 4. We're going to be talking about incident response and SIEMS. If you don't know about either of those things, we'll learn a little bit about it today. So to start off, also, can you guys test my audio too? Okay. Yeah, I hear it from you. So to start off, I'll go over an interview. We're gonna do the introduction of us and our roles. And then we'll go over the definition of SIM, essential skills for SIM investigation, very significant collecting. I equal the demonstration, but it's just never ends.
Yeah, I also gonna be explaining a little bit what is it for after. So I'm just gonna say what we do, but
So actually, just a quick, we'll do that now. So I'm currently interning at a company called Fortis, and they do IT and consulting. So I'm in the IT department, network and security. So
yeah, I'm incident response. That's what we're gonna kind of look with. I work in Sony Pictures. So incident response is part of information security. Information security, that's why I was asking you about the groups involved. Information security is really big, and there's a lot of requirements inside. And one of the requirements inside information security is the incident response. I'm going to explain a little bit further, but that's what I do. And that's my day-to-day for interning right now. Hopefully I can get a full-time job, but that's
So for the definition of a SIM stands for Security Information and Event Management. So basically, it's a centralized dashboard that collects data from different devices, both hardware and also on the cloud. It correlates events across systems, detects suspicious activity, and generates event alerts in order for you to investigate. And it also supports compliance and reporting. So depending on what the goal is of the company, they will target specific events that they'll want to prioritize and investigate further. For example, he will go into it more, but if he's on incident response, then one of his first frontline jobs will be to check out for any alerts that look like they're high priority.
Yeah, like you were saying, the alerts come different sources. So sometimes we use the tool that the logs there, members of the lake, or a person, two computers, whatever. There's also the ones everything that so many people there. Just throw there and you can search. Usually personal devices are kind of hard. Buying your company data, so it's kind of hard. But just from there we use.
For the company that I'm working at, they're trying to choose a SIM in order to deploy that particular SIM for a client. So it wouldn't be for them, but it would be for one client. So they have a client that has a network infrastructure, and what they want is to not have to track all the logs from different switches, different firewalls separately. They want one place where they can get all the logs together. So they're in the process of picking a SIM where they can deploy it for that client. And then these four are probably, these are very popular examples. Cisco Splunk is one of the first ones. And there's Microsoft Sentinel as well. QRadar used to be Palo Alto, which are firewalls, but they got bought by and then this is CrowdStrike. So this is just a quick visual in case that's helpful for anyone. Um, yeah. It's just showing you, in this case, it's a lot of hardware, and then it's in collects all of it. So one of the things that we were talking about to include in this presentation was that in order to use the SIM properly, you should probably focus on their specific personality traits and also skills that would help you as an analyst in that way. You can be technical and go into using a SIM with a lot of technical skills, but for the most part, when you start using it, you don't know how to use it. You have to learn anyway. So, and if you were to switch from one SIM to another, like the learning curve is kind of steep depending. So you would have to keep in mind that there are certain traits that you should have, including analytical would be like critical thinking, law interpretation, pattern. So this would be if you studies for from using a SIM previously, your experience. But then for in terms of communication, there's a lot of things involving incident response where you have to be really good at communication, being able to document things clearly, both verbally and also, on paper. Collaboration with IT and support is like the number one thing that happens with blogs. And also,
I think that we would want this highlight because a lot of people say we need to go and once you get in the job, see most things those like meeting business criteria, talking with stakeholders, or even talking with someone that got infected, one that don't even know about anything or anything that is happening. We just want to have fixed, or we just want to protect our assets. So it's really important to understand this and take have the soft skills, which are that's why I urge you guys to really want to go take this response or anything actually which is really
so what I've noticed so far is in terms of using the SIM, we haven't selected one yet, but they've been demoing, and the people who are actually directly looking at it are engineers. In this case, we don't have like an incident response position, but they're engineers and network analysts, cybersecurity. So they're looking at these logs, and the person who isn't in fact looking at the logs is like the owner of it. But the engineers themselves, when they're looking at something, they have to communicate this to the owner, and he who has technical knowledge probably doesn't have so much learning what the alert looks like, but they would have to communicate that with
yeah, for example, you don't want to like come to the CEO like, oh, like this IP was actually like throw a lot of really technical stuff in that he's not gonna understand, it's not gonna be useful. So making this clear and show to him what is actually useful sometimes is more important. Uh, than
So we're going to go into some terms or ideas related to business criteria that you would want to define using slash selecting. One of the things is budget. Obviously, the budget is the most important. And you guys as professionals probably, if unless you're the CEO, you're not going to be the person like setting the budget. But you might get told this information and you will be in the evaluation phase of choosing a SIM and you have budget in mind. That includes things like the licensing model, which a lot of the time with SIMs, before you get it, they can either give you a demo using like simulated hardware or what you would do for your life, or sometimes they give you a license in order to use it on the actual client that you want it to be for, and that license will last for a certain period of time. It gives you like example of what it would be like to keep budget in mind. Infrastructure, this is the most important too because it just whichever sim you choose depends on what you're going to use it for. If you have a sim or if you have an infrastructure that's mostly cloud based, then that will affect which sim you choose. If you have one that is mostly like Microsoft, Windows stuff, you might want to choose Microsoft. So the three things I've seen in all my research are that they label them like say cloud, hybrid, or on-prem. So on-prem would be the hardware, hybrid would be a mixture of both, and then cloud is mostly cloud service that you want to. And then the last thing is your team and your skill set. This doesn't just mean how well you guys communicate. This actually means how many engineers are planning on touching the sim. That also depends. Some sims are built for a bigger team in order to operate them, and some of them are they're specifically tailored to only a small amount of people. And they also have things like SOC, which is that security operation. Yeah, I think that's what it stands for. Sometimes the sim will have a built-in SOC, and you can actually access a team of professionals on the side of whoever's of the sim, and they can help you out with. And they would manage a little bit more, but in some cases, your company will say, no, we want our engineers to be the first people to operate this, so that in that case, the software gets important.
And you can see now that there's two tiers of SOC analysts. There's level 1, 2, or 3. We're seeing a lot of level 1, but they're just cars. They're really in place by really trying to get into SOC analyst level. Getting here. But if you like 2 or 3, but I mean, at the same time, if you understand how to use SOC, you also open source place inside.
And then the last thing to keep in mind is your compliance and regulation. So companies, whatever their clients are, whatever their purpose is, they'll have those compliances that they need to keep in mind. Some sims will be more customizable in terms of keeping that in mind. I don't know exactly which ones all of these are, but like everyone knows HIPAA, right? So if you're working for a company that does IT stuff for dental, like a medical company, something dental, then they would have to keep HIPAA in mind when they're logging these this information. The SIM cautious. And then also log retention. So in this case, retention means how long the logs are able to be accessed by the sim. Different sims will allow you to have different retention. In the case of like my company, the priority for the logs to be to have a very long versus like 30 days when
for example, the one that we use, we can always we're trying to push it more.
You would only be able to access this. Yeah. So now we're gonna compare 3 very popular things: Splunk, Sentinel, and CrowdStrike. So Cisco Splunk is, I think, the most popular. It's also like the most expensive. Um, it's cloud and hybrid. I think since it's Cisco, it'll put a big emphasis on cloud, but it can be hybrid. Their tiers are, this will be like which deployment model, which so cloud and hybrid, you got pay as you go and tiered. And when you say pay as you go, usually that means like how many gigabytes of or log. And then large enterprises needing flexibility, and it's highly scalable. Probably the most. MS Sentinel is cloud native, and they take advantage of Azure. So if you're using a different service, maybe you're not using Azure, you would probably want to, whether you want to pay per GP and well, you organizations use MS Stack or like Windows stuff, Windows servers probably take advantage of that. And it's also highly scalable. And then CrowdStrike is cloud and hybrid. You pay for endpoint subscription. So what I noticed about CrowdStrike is that it's very focused on endpoints and not like more so the companies prioritize security, and it's scalable for environments.
What happens a lot too, they do like both. They use both. Like they use Splunk as a log ingester, and then they use CrowdStrike as the ETR point for laptops, phones. we use.
EDR endpoint. So we'll go over like two, and then have which thing out of three that we talked about. One company with software as a service. We've got 800 employees. They scale fast. They're cloud native, mostly AWS, sometimes they use Azure. High log volume for microservices, moderate budget, and no strict regulatory requirements. They need visibility across cloud workloads. They want flexibility for customers. They're concerned about. So, I'll give like 2 minutes. Think about it. Would you prefer to see this page or the one with the search? Maybe this one, and then you guys can use Google. Between Splunk, Sentinel, and CrowdStrike. And it can be, you could say 2 or 3.
And there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, there's no right. It's up to the owner, really. So,
Like we said, we're saying meeting business criteria. That's that we want to do.
Cisco, Splunk, MS, Sentinel. Oh, yeah. I know that was short, but let's see what. There's no wrong answer. So if you think Splunk, and you can raise it for multiple, if you think Splunk would be a possibility for this company, Sentinel, CrowdStrike. So instinctually, you guys would have like Splunk and Sentinel would probably be better. CrowdStrike would most likely be eliminated. So Splunk has strong customization. That's for those compliance rules. And the only downside would be that the cost will quickly scale. So considering they have a moderate budget, they would probably have to do some strict budgeting in order to work. And then Sentinel, it has that Azure integration, which they say they use a little bit. And then AWS environment, this would be the only one. They probably have to have what's called connectors to link that to. Okay. One more scenario. This one I think is a little bit. You've got a financial institution, 6,000 employees, on-prem and hybrid infrastructure. They have strict regulatory requirements, like PCI DSS, 1 year log retention minimum, a dedicated software, very, very large. They need strong audit trails, custom correlation tools, long-term log storage, and advanced reporting. I'll give you guys a minimum. Between Cisco Splunk, Microsoft Sentinel, and CrowdStrike. How many people think it's Splunk? Okay. No, maybe half. Straight. Seems like we're a little undecided. Okay. I think it's probably Splunk. Mainly because they have that large budget. So that would be the main leader for Splunk for most people. They also have strong compliance reporting, strong compensation, mature support, and it will handle a hybrid environment. Even if it's puts that priority on cloud, it will handle it. And then for the last bit of my part, I just wanted to talk about what I've noticed about the SIM selection process. What I was told to do at the company that I'm working at is, well, to begin with, it was take a look at these 4 SIMs that somebody researched. And then it was research more. And then it was give me a document with all your notes about all the research. And then from that, someone chose 4. Then from those 4 SIMs, now I have to get in contact with all the SIMs. So I go on the internet, far and wide for any contact information. Companies are not to get in contact with. It took like several weeks. Phone calls like 6 a.m. in the morning that I would be getting from like Microsoft. And Microsoft seemed to not understand what like Sentinel was because I would their thing was only automated, so I would say Sentinel and they'd say the internet. And I'd be like, I don't understand. But you get in contact with the SIMs. These 2 things were not done by me, but they are done by someone. And those things are communicated to me, and then I go and research them. So I'm at stage 3. This is kind of where I start. I mean, after all my research, this is where I start. I have to set up an intro call. So once I have a contact with somebody that tells me that they're from the SIM or that they work for SIM, then I have to set up an intro call with them, which is usually like 10 to 30 minutes. Prepare as a, as a new VM, like you're a clue what I'm talking about. But the goal is to get them in contact with one of my bosses, of which then they set up a demo because the engineers are able to communicate truly what they want to use SIM for and with all their technical jargon. So they set up a demo or a license to demo the SIM with the client. And then you have to document all your findings, Excel, absolutely. And then, so currently, my company here, we've demoed nearly every single SIM, and they're kind of leaning towards one. So then the last thing we did is decision. Since they were already there, it's just it's like the engineers now have to work with the SIM company vendor and whatever engineers on their side to start learning how to use it. But usually for high level engineers, it's not as difficult for them to figure it out.
What is she saying? This is corporate America. It takes a lot of processes to see, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And I know it's like frustrating, but that's how it is, and that's like how you experience right now. It's crazy, right? Business criteria, business requirements. We don't even think in college, but it's something that makes sense. Sucks. Probably like in this was easier because they already have this piece, but I don't know. But I'm just picking. So meaning just um, and after probably they should start all this test and see if that actually is suitable or not. Sometimes we use the platform and so actually we don't like words.
Yeah.
That
So
happens.
at this point, I was put on the company as like network and security intern, but I haven't really done anything network and security yet. Like it's been mostly this. And then I'm getting an account though for whatever sim we choose. I'll start to like but for the most part, this is what happens when you join a company. Specifically a small one. I don't know if you have
We already
but
had a
Sony already had a sim, right? So when he joined Sony, they just give him like the account and they tell him to train for it.
Yeah, I was already like, okay, let's use this, and that. We have all this source. Well, I was gonna show you why, like the instant response, how much it is like a burden. And so understanding the business, I think is the most important. Like what we use, what tools. Of course, there's a lot of people that pivot from one job to another, but their mentality stay on the previous job. So they're just like, oh, like we use this and that, but now you're just environment, right? It's totally different things like that. But the literally is food.
Now, passive.
So yeah, as I was saying, internally it's a response. So I've been there for like 5 months now. They already have a SIEM, which is fun, which is really big. Same really big company, and we used as EDR as for like our assets. Gosh, I just want to first familiarize what is the term is and what is instant response. Like no one knows, right? Like, you guys have an idea, like tell me what you guys think about it, what I do, what is my day to day, what I guys just don't read about this. Just don't read. Like what do you guys think it is? There's no right.
Shout out a word.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Think about it. Instant response. That too, but I mean, like, what is my specific role? What do you think? Yeah, that could be a good way to put it on. I mean, if someone clicks on a link, I go there just like, oh, is this link good or bad, right? Like, that's what I'm trying to say. So never there's an attack or advance, right? Because it could be a little bit, a little bit, but then advance, we go there and we investigate. Okay, is this actually true or not? Right? And then we investigate and do it. So basically, as you were saying, whenever someone fucked up, I go there. But obviously, there's more inside of the job. It's not only that. As you can see, an incident, as what I was saying, is something that actually happened, a malware triggered, or someone clicked and someone and actually got something bad, or even like there's a misconfiguration in a bucket, in an AWS bucket, that could also be related to an incident. That's something that could happen. And a vulnerability, we have vulnerability scanners. So whenever there's a vulnerable asset or something that is vulnerable, we go there and see, okay, this could be an incident or not, or it could be just like a fake alert, right? And then that's what I'm saying. Not every alert that we see in Splunk or in SIEM is actually an incident. Could be an event, could be something that happened, but sometimes it's legitimate, right? A lot of people like what I did actually. A lot of I fucked up a lot of times because sometimes I thought it was actually like, oh, this looks so much suspicious, but it was actually right. It happens. It happens. So inside of the incident response too, we call the information security team, right? I was explaining there's like a lot of branches of policies we all need to apply, and then inside of information security, there's the incident response. And incident response, there's also some branches. So whenever we want to understand where the attacks are coming from, there's threat intelligence, right? So that name resonates with you guys. What do you guys think it is threat intelligence?
The understanding
Right, but what do you mean by understanding? How do we understand?
uh, doing basically looking going through all the information
Right? But where do you know?
um,
Data analysis. We wanted to do data analysis. This is something that is actually on our responsibility. Obviously, I am the instant responder, and whenever it happens something, I go there and respond. But there's also threat hunter or for example, forensic analysis. Okay, someone actually fucked up, like our is collapsing, and we need to investigate this, right? So we would make really secure machine, and we go analyze further what happened. I think if you take field two, go to like a study case about it. It was really interesting. If you have the chance to do that class, it's pretty nice. Like I said, there's SOC managers. In my company, for example, we don't have like SOC analysts. We just call incident response. Right? Is basically this. That's how we have like a lot of people in it, so we don't need that. But I just want to enforce that also. Not only the our team is there's a lot of different vectors, but also there's external players. Whenever there's legal compliance, okay, now actually like someone that tried to hack us, you want to actually understand where they came from. You want to get him put in the police, right? Because maybe billions of dollars stolen. That happens next. And maybe billions of data stolen. So we need to go and comply. Like the legal, like company could get really for that. So obviously, if there's also like escalation, something we also go to law enforcement because they have more data. The police have data like everywhere. So sometimes it is easier to also work with FBI. Never we have in the previous like 2014, if you guys know the Sony attack, that we also saw we saved law enforcement. Right. So there's also third parties. So whenever we, for example, we all know the anime platform, Crunchyroll. So we own Crunchyroll. Sometimes they get attacked, and we say like, okay, like this is happening. Like we need to fix that. They have their because they're really big, so they have their own like with the responders and everything. But like sometimes we also need to. So that's pretty interesting to see pivoting off everywhere. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So usually what we call life cycle is how we prepare for an incident, right? So there's two ways to prepare to be to face challenge incident is basically the proactive way. So it's like understanding where you're coming from, doing threat hunting, doing like a lot of data analysis, like understanding. There's also the proactive no, the proactive hunting that is actually understanding where, and reactive, which is us. Whenever it happens something, we go and react to the things. So you can see we prepare, like this is day to day. Usually we are more in the prepare phase. Oh, we saw a gap here, let's go and fix it. Let's do it better. You know. So usually my day to day is actually only preparing, and obviously see what happens. So if there's identification, we see, okay, this is a gap, we need to fix that, or we need to get better. We go there and try to find better ways to close the gap. So whenever there is an issue, we contain them. So if there is an incident actually infected a computer, we need to contain the computer so this is spread out, right? So there's eradication. Once we do contain that, then we okay, let's do a command so we can erase this malware. This happens because we can actually CrowdStrike, we can access their computers and do whatever. So you see like how sensitive because we can actually access like this company owned assets, so that's why we can access. But that's why it's super sensitive, like to understand those and whenever there is something spilled, we need to recover, and and then once we recover, we need to understand like why this came, why this happened, and try to again close the gap as close as possible. We go to another one. So this is like how I usually investigate. So that part was more a business, more like a department duty, and this is like how we invest. So there's an alert, right? So CM, so usually, actually the CM, the alert doesn't go to CM, but it goes to another platform. And then we see that, okay, this is an incident. Let's check on the CM. Is this actually a incident? And then we triage, which is this real? What is the severity? Like, is it super malicious? Like, it's gonna fuck up with everything. Yes or no? Is it a false positive? Guys know what is a false positive is? Yeah.
Well, I know we're drugs. It's like when they test drugs, they do have a little chemical test that shows like if it's actually cocaine or not. I know this is different than cyber, but sometimes it's like it isn't the actual drug itself. It just makes it seem like positive, and it affects the person they're investigating because the person being investigated is actually actually
Yeah.
guilty of anything.
So this happens a lot actually. Sometimes it is like someone like is downloading a lot of data, but it's for our employees load a lot of data, which happens a lot in production. This is like a lot of things. And then we think it's like, oh my god, why is this guy is like downloading all the stuff, but it just because he's job. So we need to investigate. Okay, that's why the triage part, like asking all these questions. Ask yourself, like, is this real? And what they need to do. Just test. And then if there is something, you pivot. Now, so you're gonna pivot. It's like basically investigate. You pivot to see, okay, with these logs, what can I find with these logs? Which is funny because sometimes we think like we need to narrow down. But it is always good to broad things up, like always broad, because we don't sometimes we think it's something and we just put our hands on that. Okay, this is definitely this, but sometimes we miss some other sources or some other indexes, right? So it's something that is really interesting to always broad down your research first and then understand where it comes. Shoot to everything. And then obviously hypothesize sometimes it is wrong, your hypothesis, but the important part of the hypothesis is just to okay, ask questions. We always been asking questions. Why this happened? Like why this user? Like why this user like changed time so quickly? Like I think you probably remember that this department, right? We always been doing like asking questions for the victim. What are we asking for ourselves, right? Why is this? Why is the behavior going? And then also we need to validate those answers, right? So we can just hypothesize, okay, this is definitely no, we can't. Yeah, okay, like, this is happening because of this. We need to show them, like the user, that you need to like set your password, or we need to get into your computer because all this figure, right? So then we conclude if it's true positive, a false positive, or did escalate or something happened. Sometimes we need to talk with other people to actually resolve it. We can help resolve it, but we know we understood what happened. So yeah, then once we act, which is then we close the ticket down and we document it. Everything's documented automatically. But if it's a really big accident, we need to actually like everyone needs to talk about it. And never happened yet in my experience, but definitely something that needs to be always brought back. That's normal. So yeah, so that's just how we think. I usually like to think in timelines, not events. So if you don't know, we have like the 1 year detention, right? If we don't know if this happened before or we don't know the timeline, it's just like doing a timeline and seeing like okay, this thing happened and just putting like a puzzle, right? So just puzzling and always try to put as a timeline, which is shows you like a broader picture of the stuff. And then one thing that I always say, okay, that know me well, I always say like think of it as attacker, right? Basically, what we're trying to do is just stopping attackers, but how are you going to understand attackers if you don't even know how an attacker works, right? So that's why I think it's really important to, even though you don't want to go to like red teaming, the attack side of things, it's really good to understanding, okay, um, what do attacker usually do? Like, what do they do? The mechanisms, right? What are usually the malware they're doing? So it is tricky. There's no like formula how to understand that, but that's why I urge to say like, okay, try hacking or try competition because it does exposure to that mindset. You know, the things start broad and then narrow down. I think that's right. You got the gig of it, and then tripped up right, which I did. I'm not gonna lie. Tunnel vision is something that interesting. It is actually happening, but this is for real happening. Like this is my hypothesis. I know for sure this is, but sometimes like you're too focused on that and you don't see other aspects, and then you kind of get lost in the investigation of like all the time that you put in effort. Look, you got time, right? So just think about that when you're like working through it. Alert fatigue is just like assume that um, alert that is always happening is like actually good. Sometimes alert that is always happening, uh, uh, it could be cause for trouble a lot of times. But definitely, if something is happening a lot, you need to like, okay, why this is happening so much? Maybe it is like misconfiguration of our firewall. I don't know. But yeah, and then confirm our biases. So always confirm whenever you care about biases. And okay, in this website. And what I usually look at is called indicators of compromise. So as you can see, just anything IP addresses, domains, hashes, URLs, anything that looks suspicious, we look for it. Okay, so like timeline, like I said, sometimes there's a guy in I don't know Brazil, and then 5 minutes after he's in like I don't know Europe, somewhere like Germany. Like this is impossible. You know, like why this? That's why I urge timeline. But also, I'll go into some exercises and we want to spoil, but keep that in mind. And behavior. How does he behavior? Is he trying to actually manipulate it? That actually happens a lot. And how those things are used again. Uh, that is, like I said, because of attack, and whenever there's like a behavior pattern, you can actually visualize where any laterally you can actually pivot way faster and to understand, okay, this guy is doing this because of this. We have like a framework. I'm not gonna go into the deep into it, but it's called Mitri framework. We want to try to a little bit of research, use that like the upper I think I already explained the false positive and negative. But what we're seeing today is a lot of impersonation attacks, so the deepfakes, right?